Welcome back, everyone, to the Total Innovation Podcast, where we dive deep into the challenges of building real, lasting innovation inside complex organizations and spotlight the people who are doing it for real. As always, I'm your host, Simon Hill. Today's episode is all about something we often talk about but rarely embrace in the corporate world: failure. Our guest today is building his career around the concept that failure isn't something to bury or avoid. He believes it's actually one of your company's greatest underused assets. That's the idea behind today's conversation, entitled Capital of Failure. My guest is Pavlo Ryzhiy, an innovation strategist originally from Ukraine and now based in Hamburg in Germany. Pavlo started his journey in marketing at 3M, and after further roles in marketing, moved to be an in-house innovation lead at PMI. He now runs the Corporate Innovations Institute, where he works with organizations who've already tried to launch innovation programs and failed. His speciality is helping those companies take a second swing, and this time to make it stick. And behind all of this is a personal journey of resilience. Pavlo and his family had to leave Ukraine due to the war and start over in Germany, an experience that brings an added layer of perspective to how he views transformation, failure, and what it takes to rebuild. And with that, let's get into it. Welcome, Pavlo, to the Total Innovation Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Hello, Simon. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
My pleasure. So, Pavlo, let's get started with this core idea, the concept that failure can be capital, not just a cost. What do you mean when you talk about capital of failure, and why is it such a crucial mindset shift for corporate innovators?
Yeah, great question, Simon. Thank you. Actually, I came to this to this concept through, I would say, pain of trying to build this concept because everybody are talking about this, yeah. And when you start in corporate innovation program, and this is absolutely mandatory to have this safe, secure feeling for employees. That they can fail fast, easily, cheap, and so on. But entire philosophy in corporations, in majority of companies, is like failure is something very bad. And I would be surprised if there will be many viewers of this podcast or overall people who do have corporate experience who could say or confirm that, yeah, in our company we are welcoming failures, and this is actually the repository of failures from our employees, and you could learn from them, and so on and so on. So this it's not happening frequently. Yeah, sometimes company experimenting with such a formats like failure night or fuck up nights, and this is also popular entertainment format. But even in these formats, a majority of people would love to say about like failure united or combined with success, because usually failures being hide under the carpets in the companies, and the authors of these failures are usually forgotten, and they laid off, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so we love to talk about successful success. And in this environment, it's very hard to persuade people to experiment, to tackle unknownness. And when there is a certain risk behind innovations, it's always about certain risks. And that's why I was also struggling and experiencing this pain that I could not effectively or massively engage people to corporate innovation activities due to this barrier. And in experimental, let's say, way, or trials and fails way as well, I end up with this idea that, hey, why failure is good. So what experiment-driven approach saving us from? It's saving us from failure on scale. Yeah. So when we making small, quick and cheap failure, it save our time, save our money, resources, and so on from losses on a big scale. And with this concept, we started let's say experimenting, and this concept was really appreciated and accepted by management. of the company where we started from this concept, yeah, and it was accepted, let's say. And then when someone or corporate innovator started with certain idea, and then after diving into prototyping, experimenting phase with this idea of certain opportunity or saving opportunity or growth opportunity, and then after failed and proved that this idea doesn't work, we convert this, let's say, results into the thinking like, hey, if we imagining that this idea would initially be liked by management and they would invest in this idea massively on scale, how much money we would lose if we would do so. And these losses, which does not happening, converted into the capital of fail. So this is one of the, let's say, lines in this capital, in one of the accounts, yeah, in this capital. And then after, with next all the next failures also been capitalized, let's say, so accumulated, and end of the certain period, someone could say, hey, we, thanks to our let's say, prototyping and testing approach, thanks to our corporate innovation program or entrepreneurship program or program of developing of the corporate entrepreneurship, corporate culture, or corporate entrepreneurship program, whatever you call it, thanks to this program, we not only achieved certain positive results with opportunities unlocked and so on, and talking about successful success, yeah, but also it saves us from the failure for billions or millions or decamillions, depends on the scale and the period and the size of the company, losses. And usually, this capital of failure is something much bigger than the real opportunities which was successful, just because statistically for innovations, you usually have to deal with, like, say, more failures than the successes. Yeah. So this is the concept, and this is the practical application of the example of practical application of this concept. And thanks to that, we could appreciate and celebrate the failures, not meaning that, hey, you failed and you be working only for the purpose of failure. But no, if you fail, is also good because we capitalize on this knowledge, we capitalize on this somehow money, yeah, and risks and knowledge about these risks and failures. And if you succeed, sorry, oh, fantastic! We capitalize on this as well with further development of this idea and scaling it and earning money or cutting costs.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a good scene setter. And I think the idea of this as some kind of, quasi balance sheet item from a capital perspective is a good one. There'll be people that are listening that are, familiar in some capacity with concepts of failing fast and failing forward. And I think failure capital as a build on that is quite a nice idea. In entrepreneurship land, these sort of therapeutic nights of fuck up nights or whatever are quite common. I haven't seen them as much in corporate land. Maybe they do exist as well. But as you said, there's a little bit of theater. There's a lot of therapy in some of those, but there's also a real capital that isn't perhaps as easily measurable, but still carries a huge amount of value, right? And we'll get into that a little bit in our discussion later about some of the enablements around this. We need this because a lot of your work starts after something didn't work, right? And I think it's a space that many companies don't talk enough about, that a moment where our huge enthusiasm for this great innovation project suddenly turns into silence as we slowly sweep the failure under the carpet and try and move on to the next thing, whether we call it a failure or not, right? It's like we've all experienced that. It was the big thing and then it was nothing all of a sudden, and we all kind of wonder, what do you think some of the most common reasons are that things fail for the first time? And maybe you think it's okay that they do as well. And how do you help companies to turn that into an advantage?
Yeah, actually, the tool, or the capital failure tool, as a balance sheet, like you correctly suggested, it's exactly one of the practical tools how to deal with the failures like with something accumulatable and valuable. And I would here maybe I will not recreate the wheel or the bicycle, saying that enablement of the fast, cheap, controllable or manageable experiments is the way how companies can deal with this with the risks and with the failure comfortably. And to enable that, of course, companies should have certain capabilities and tools, and there are many of them. And one very important tool is, of course, ability to co-experiment with external experts, because usually when it's about innovation, when it's about doing something new, it's always about unknowns. You don't know what will be the results, because if you would know, then it's not about innovation, it's about just deployment project. Yeah. And if you don't know, it means that there is a certain probability of success and certain probability of not of failure. Yeah. That is why you should be ready. The company should be ready. The corporate innovator or entrepreneur should be ready for that. The internal sponsor of this entrepreneur, his team. So everybody should understand this idea that, hey, we are dealing with something we never done before. And it means that we can fail, and it's okay. And this is a must component of trying something new. Our task is to organize the process in a way so we can do it as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, and without real risks for our ongoing business. And this is actually the one of the tasks of the guys like I. This is what I'm doing with the companies. This is where my expertise is actually available. How to organize this process in a way so these components, these criteria which I just listed will work actually. And yeah, so these are the main things. And when you're dealing with this balance sheet, and then after you can end of a certain period, can talk about the efficiency and productivity of this activity, because you can talk about yes, we spend so much time and finance for the experiments, and some of them failed, and we have capital of failure. And on the other hand, we, thanks to these experiments, proved that certain opportunity is available or accessible. It means that we can earn money, we can have new profits thanks to cutting costs or new growth opportunities with this very solution which we just tested. And maybe one of the 10 solutions will work, but with these calculations, let's say, so with this balance sheet, you can easily prove that overall system is efficient, because cheap 10 cheap experiments will be covered by 10th or 11th successful opportunity which was tested and proved successfully. So this is how it works. And about this cheap and fast experimenting, here I would love to underline that the role of the open innovation format, the role how you can collaborate with innovation ecosystem is crucial, because many things inside of the corporate world just does not work in a cheap way, let's say so. And I think this is something we can discuss further, because it's about innovation procurement. It's about the thinking how you purchase the innovation as a service as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, we'll get there. And just to set the scene, because I think, I find this topic engaging and interesting, but I think it can also feel really complex, right? Is it complicated, or is it actually really quite simple in many ways? Like, how should someone sort of conceptualize this as a living, breathing thing? We all know what a balance sheet is, but maybe it's a bit harder to understand the concept of a failure balance sheet or something.
So the question was about engagement, because there are three different subjects that I can start answering this question.
I think probably the question to start with is what does this look like? Like, how simple is it? How complicated is it from an organizational perspective to to start to create this kind of balance sheet of failure, right? Then we'll get into engagement as a follow-up.
Yeah, it's actually it's super easy because anyhow you budget in your corporate innovation activities, you budget in your communication activities with the employees, you budget in your experiments, you budget in your prototypes, and this is something which all companies are familiar, and this is this is the
Yeah, that's what I wanted to pull on, right? That this isn't complicated in many ways, and we'll get into KPIs a little bit later. I'm going to tilt us slightly before we get there, and teasing some of the things that are coming later in the discussion into the idea of in order to do this, we need to get the company culturally engaged, and we want to rebuild confidence through engagements and gamification approaches is one of those. So if something fails, right, then confidence, as I said earlier, tends to disappear. People try and sweep these things under the carpet, even if there's a notional culture of failing forward and learning from failure. Like incentives and personal career protection, everything else drives a very different behavior in almost all organizations. But you've created an engagement method that helps bring people back into the fold in a playful and potentially even empowering way. So can you tell us a little bit about that approach and how it engages employees who maybe many don't see themselves naturally as innovators?
Yeah, this is absolutely true. People who are signing contract as an employee, they're usually not looking for risks. They're looking for safety and protection and support from the company, and they would love to look confident into the future, and that's why they are not choosing the career of entrepreneur. But on the other hand, companies are in need for entrepreneurs because they are enterprises. They're entrepreneuring on the market and they're competing with the competitors. And it's very hard actually to imagine that company can be competitive enough when the competition as a concept, the entrepreneurship concept, is not being observed and practiced by employees. But that's actually usually what is happening in the majority of companies, and maybe that's why pretty often we've seen startups are winning corporations in competition game, yeah, let's say so. And that's absolutely correct. When we start in the usually the corporate innovation development program, we do having relatively easy and fast some cohort of early adopters of this concept, of this idea. They are ready to dive into the story. They were ready to play the role of the entrepreneur. They do have ideas and so on. But the first barrier you're facing with the second cohort, let's say with the first 10%, everything is more or less okay. With them, we do have another challenge. Another challenge with them is to turn them from episodic, from ad hoc entrepreneurs to the repetitive, to serial entrepreneurs, to push them, to persuade them, to help them to initiate second, third, fourth project and experiment. Yeah. But what to do with this 90% of people who are sitting saying, hey, I'm not entrepreneur, I'm not risky, I'm here, to have a safe work and a job and so on. And to engage them, it was a real challenge. And we ended up with the idea saying, hey, so there is a role for you, even if you don't feel yourself from the very beginning like entrepreneur or innovator and so on. There is a role for you. You can be an expert in the corporate startup. You should not take all responsibility for the, let's say, risks and so on in this journey, despite the fact that there is no risks for your career and so on, because you're experimenting on a small scale, and everything is approved and managed and controlled, let's say, and so on. But still, it's like you said, it's really psychological side of the story. But even if you're not ready to start this engagement, like even an expert, like someone who is helping corporate startups to help other colleague who initiated certain prototyping and testing initiative, then you can also have a role to play. You can invest money into the corporate startups, but not your own money. It's kind of a virtual money. That's why we call it gamification. Yeah, because it's about like venture investor in game for all employees into corporate startups, and it's really create this gamified approach, the willingness to an engagement to observe what is going on with innovations in our company, who is doing what, or which projects were initiated, and so on, or interesting, because I can invest some virtual money, like it's real money of the company, but it's virtual money. It's kind of a coins, options, if you want to say, for employees, for real employees. But later, if your investment succeed, you can get real dividends. Normally, it's not something huge. It can be up to a couple of thousand a year if you are super active investor, and if you are talking about the relatively big corporation and big opportunities, for the corporate startups. But it's gamified story. So you say, oh yeah, look, I've invested, I was curious, I was engaged to this movement, and I earned something. Now I believe that it's possible. My fear decreasing, and next step for me saying, hey, but I can also create value. I can be part of these corporate startups. Even if I'm not ready to initiate my own, I would love to join someone's, because it's interesting, it's possible, it's not something scary, and I can earn more, because when I will be a part of the startup, definitely my part in the potential benefits can be bigger. And the third step is, okay, now I tried myself as a corporate, as a startup co-owner or co-founder or expert. And as a third step, I now prepared physical, mentally, from the skills point of view, to create or to initiate my own corporate startup. And the fourth step is, yes, now I'm equipped with the knowledge and experience and so on, so I can support others to create corporate startups, to do their entrepreneurship activities and so on. So this is so we creating an engine which generates constantly, and with the chain reaction effect, the movement, entrepreneurship movement in company. So this is the role of this gamification approach, to unfreeze these non-entrepreneurial employees, who is majority in the company, to step by step engage into this movement and transform, not from the one workshop, not from the one like meeting. It's not possible to change mind of the people during just one meeting. He was not, or she was not an entrepreneur, and in a 5 minutes discussion or persuasion or persuasive discussion, he or she immediately turned to entrepreneur and ready to experiment. No, it's not happening. So we're giving people time and vehicle to have this journey from non-entrepreneurial employee who are afraid of everything, to one who engaged others and support others.
Yeah, I think so. What we've now in this call created a failure balance sheet, and now we're creating a sort of equity style cap table, or an innovation dividend concept as well. And it's the idea of an innovation dividend is something that I've played around with, and we've done a bit of work with in Wazoku land as well, because there's an element, and if we apply this into startup world, you have concepts of founder equity and sweat equity, and obviously sort of investments capital that drives actual equity, et cetera, et cetera. And lots of employees will come in and have small amounts of equity for their contributions to help to grow the thing, often because they will come in early. Maybe they could have made more money elsewhere doing other things and taken on less risk elsewhere than doing the things. And there are definitely synergies, lessons that can be carried over from that world into this concept building, right? And that not everyone has to play a role of builder and entrepreneur and even doer. Actually, like, you could just be the person that believes enough in this to put a bit of weight behind it as you go. Let's talk a little bit about the procurement side of this and the systemic barriers that can get in the way. And as you were talking earlier, I wrote down this idea that often gets lost, I think, in some of the early innovation hype, which is, does anyone actually want this fucking thing, right? Is someone going to pay for it? Or willingness to pay maybe is or procure or use in some way, shape, or form has got to be there. It can be a brilliant idea, but if there's no actual problem solution fit and therefore feeding into product market fit with a willingness to pay, it was just a vanity project, probably, right? From a business perspective, certainly if it's a revenue driver or a growth driver for the business. So whilst culture is one piece, and that's what we were just talking about with the sort of investment style gamification approach, systems are another potential quiet killer of innovation inside an organization. And one of the parts of the business that perhaps is a lived bottleneck from my experience, or a lived enabler, is the procurement function, right? And it's often never reimagined, never, frequently ignored, often blamed. So what is the idea that you have behind, you mentioned a little bit earlier in the conversation, this kind of experimentation as a service, and how do you see it helping companies to potentially turn their, procurement bottleneck into a procurement superpower?
Yeah. So procurement people are not living totally in their own bubble. They are also managers. They are also part of the company, the executives, and so on. And they are not acting alone. They are acting together with people from finance, with controlling, and risk management, and all this interconnected. And for this in this situation, I can talk about, maybe I would love to add a little bit to the previous question and immediately jump to answering your this very question, that the capital of failure, this idea, and the failure management, let's say, so it's also helping managers, because this is a huge barrier in companies to extend the innovation management movement and the entrepreneurship movement, is because line executives or some people who do have initiative, they are ready to start the experimenting and prototyping and testing and innovating. This is one piece. Another thing, that we should give something, some tool, some concept into the hands of their managers and managers of their managers, so they would can deal with the successes and with the failures. And this is where capital of failure play the role, so company can celebrate the failures because it's value for the company. That's why in these situations there is no need to hide the failure while you in this experimenting process, innovation process, like working, So this is the practical tool also to unfreeze the innovation saturation within organization through layers. And coming back to the question of the about the procurement, it actually was also very, very practical pain which I faced in my practice when for example, it was one of the maybe short story where it started from. We had an idea about certain tool, certain solution which should supposed to help company to save certain money. And it was relatively innovative. So it was not totally innovative, because the solution like that was on the market, but it was super, super expensive. So the business case was not there, definitely. And the idea, the initiative was like, say, hey, it seems like we do have opportunity to create the same solution, but 10 times cheaper, so the business case can work. And procurement in the company said, hey, of course, let's make a tender and find the right partner who can create a prototype for us. And for the procurement in the big corporations, there is a certain rules that you should deal, and you can deal only with proved suppliers, with someone who is many years on the market, very proved, we have experience working with them, compliant, blah, 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 blah. And we said, okay, it will not work with these companies, just simply because they're not thinking in a way of like garage style prototypes creation in terms of the cost and speed. But let's try and let's play this game. there was a tender. There were 3 or 4 proposals for the prototype. All of them were beyond much higher. The proposals were, if I'm not mistaken, the cheapest one for 30,000 euros or dollars for that time. And with this cycle of production of this prototype was the fastest one, if I'm not mistaken, 3 months. Other was like 9 months, 6 months, and so on. And then after we said, okay, can you let us to show you the proposal from the makers, like garage guys who do have like individual entrepreneurs, not even enterprises. And the offer there was like 2 weeks, or sorry, 3 weeks. 2 of them just waiting for spare parts from AliExpress, and 1 week for assembling, and the cost 2,000. And then we found a way how to make this first purchasing, but how to systematize this approach, we found a little bit later, because for the procurement and for finance people, we explain this idea like saying, hey, we are not buying the prototype. We are not buying this certain device which might not work, because it's crazy. Company cannot buy something which with the probability that it will not work, because it's risky immediately. We're saying that we are performing the experiment and we are buying information about risks of future investments on the scale. We are saying we're not buying prototype. We are not investing in something which can fail. We are buying information which is giving us evaluation of risks. We are buying information about the future risks of investments on the scale. And with this concept, immediately everything changed for the procurement and for the financial people. Finance managers starts loving us, because they said, hey, you are giving me experimentally proved, and what is really important, auditable information. So experiment with all the steps, with everything is documented, and you can measure everything, so it's auditable. And this auditable result is acceptable by financial institutions. It means that banks, for example, giving us cheaper money for the future investment when we would love to scale this innovative solution, just because we can prove them that we know the percentage of the risks there. So we're saying that 80% success is measured. That's why cost of capital should be lower, because usually you're dealing with a different percentage of risks. And that was really game changer for the procurement and for the financial and controlling and the risk management partners from other departments. And starting from that, we made absolutely we had absolutely new life and absolutely total green light for this co-experimenting in a fast and cheap way with let's say non-corporate friendly suppliers, and because we just simply transformed the point of view on this concept and idea. We're not buying a prototype which might not work. We're buying information, and if it failed as well, we just bought information which tells us that investing in this product on the scale will lead us to risks. That's why this information is very valuable and very important for us. It saves us from failure, from risks, from losses. That's why this is, once again, we're coming back to the question of the capital of failure, how it works as well for the managerial decision making.
I mean, I think they're quite hard arguments to win, aren't they? Especially if you're not talking the language. Often, as innovators do, we're very close to getting that language right, but it's not quite tied into some of those critical business functions and their ways of working and the language that they use and the reporting styles that they will use to measure in the right way. I think also, you can drive innovation that will drive cost savings or drive efficiency, but if someone doesn't feel that, you don't see your costs, you don't see your costs going down, or you don't see anything else changing, then how are you supposed to measure that? And maybe if I just move us into that idea, you spoke a little bit about it earlier, of how might companies rethink their KPIs around this concept of a capitalized failure balance sheet and around other things? Like, what kind of metrics actually do support progress, do you think, then?
One of the greatest metrics I'm always recommending to implement, and I think this is enabling, one of the enabling metrics. This is not only capital of failure, so accumulated potential losses we would experience if we would on scale launch all of these ideas we never launched but tested. But also there is a KPIs for the positive let's say outcomes, which is size of the opportunity. I think, and I practically proved that it's very important to measure the value potentially can be created at all stages, not only measuring or accumulating the real profits company experienced already thanks to certain innovative solutions which was implemented at scale, but also starting from size of the opportunity. That's the name of one of the KPIs. So we initially sizing the problem or the opportunity before experiment. And this is certain from to number. Then after we make an experiment and we narrowing this number down, so we now know that it's this from what to what it's where it's ended and where it started, where it's minimal opportunity and maximum opportunity. And capitalization of the size of the opportunity, so accumulation of from different kind of initiatives employees can initiate in the company. This is one of the very important KPIs because it's also plays a very practical role. Because here and now here, I would love to back to the question of engagement and to the of the organization and to the corporate innovations and entrepreneurship, because the huge barrier is to engage managers of all levels. And typical situation that the CEO or some C-level executive is sponsoring the employee, so entrepreneurship movement or trial, let's say, in the company, but it does not mean that all his C-level executive colleagues or especially line manager, middle management engaged to this game. How to use these KPIs to engage them in a very practical way, I can illustrate one of the examples. For example, so how it can be used, yeah? So on the regular, for example, monthly meeting of the board, CEO do have a certain dashboard in front of him prepared by the function which is supporting the corporate innovation movement deployment in the company. It's called the corporate innovation function, or it can be even external provider of this kind of services. And in this dashboard, he or she can see the following, that saying that, hey, in this, by each department, how many potential value or cost savings were discovered, not proved yet with experiment, but discovered initially by employees. It means that when, I don't know, sales function coming to me and saying, hey, we're having this great opportunity, we don't know the probability of success and so on, we don't know where to take the money from, can you give us more money and invest into this opportunistic thing on this scale? I am, as a general manager, could say, hey, my dear sales leader, look, our employees already for the last 3 months accumulated 10 million of euros or dollars opportunities of saving for the sales function. And it does not mean that this all 10 millions will be like real, but have you seen those ideas, these proposals about this potential 10 millions? How many experiments you supported to make happen to prove this or that idea, and so on. So it's created dialogue and money talking dialogue with people, not like, hey, do you like this idea or not? We are talking about the size. And yes, initially this sizing is very, very weird, but after the first experiment, it's becoming very tangible. And after the maybe second, third experiment, it's becoming super tangible. And then after the next and next step KPI is accumulated opportunities which are experimentally proved. It means that it's experimentally proved if you apply or deploy this idea or solution, it is with very high probability will bring you these profits, which was experimentally tested. And this is like second or third KPI in this case, yeah? So before investing in something untangible, not tested, not experimentally proved, company can have a priority to invest into something which was experimentally proved with lower risks. And this is KPIs being used for the project sourcing, so project investment into the project decision making. So company prioritizing, so do have a tool to prioritize investment based on the criteria of success, of course, criteria of the strategic necessity or urgency, how fast you can receive your payback, what expected payback should be, and what risks we are talking about in this case, yeah, and what costs, of course. So this kind of KPIs allows company to rethink the decision-making process and investment process based on the experimentally proved data.
Great. And look, I think you and I could probably talk all day on these things, but I'm conscious of time on this. I'm going to pull us towards the final part of our discussion today. But I'd actually, outside of this, love to pick that topic up with you, and maybe we can visualize some of that dashboard and some of that reporting back and share it with folk as well. So let's give that some thought. This conversation, this topic isn't just theory for you. You know, your own journey, leaving Ukraine, rebuilding your life in Germany, mirrors a lot of the themes we've talked about today: failure, uncertainty, transformation on a personal, professional level. How has that personal experience influenced your approach to helping companies navigate innovation and change?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and not simple, but not easy, because when you're talking about the personal experience related to the certain disasters, it's always sensitive, yeah. But on the other hand, I could say that I'm personally experiencing this kind of a professional reborn experience, and it gives me the real life examples, the certain certainty and certain confidence in persuading companies and leaders to treat some risky things, trial new things, and proceed with invest time and efforts and their attention to the subject of the corporate innovations, because this case, everything which is happening now in the global world, this is exactly the capital of failure, which developed markets, developed countries should use as a learning, as a failure accumulated by others. Yeah, so I can refer to the great disasters and the big mistakes of others which happened as a real life examples which are valid today in the conversations about why you should thinking about new ways of working and new approaches and new decision-making model in your company, thinking and acting toward entrepreneurial practices, not like in a format of innovation theaters, which some companies have been done for decades or for the last 15 years actively, and the majority of them failed. Just simply, it was really innovation theater, not total like entrepreneurial transformation for the companies, saying, hey, look what is happening. And especially when we're talking about the Germany, this is a great country with huge potential, but look at what is happening with the employee engagement index. So it's decreasing from year to year. And now, so in 2023, according to Gallup, employee engagement average index in Germany was only 14%. It's super low. It's extremely low. in this situation when Germany should deal and compete now with these dragons from Asia, especially in automotive industry, and not only. And all this tariffs war, which is happening right now with US or initiated by US. So in this global world, the speed of entrepreneurs is needed on all level of organization. If starting from line employees, blue collar workers, white collar workers, C-level executive, middle management, executives, VPs, CEOs, everybody should think and act in entrepreneurial way because it's extremely needed. And maybe last but definitely not least in this case, I'm using example of the defense industry innovations in Ukraine, because this is a brilliant example when people who are really like in a direct line, the firefighting, acting in a case fire activity, or not only case fires, actually in actual battlefield, experimenting with new technologies, with automotive drones, so the robotic drones, the computer vision drones, night vision drones, and so on and so forth. So all these examples, and creating solutions which are really, really innovative and breaking from the cost perspective, because before, who could think about the battlefield drone which costed $5 or $3, even $100? No way, it's not possible. Military drone cost, that should start from hundred thousands, yeah. But in this case, couple of $100, not hundred thousands, yeah. So these real life examples of the fast experimenting, necessity to act in urgency, and the actually global economical urgency, all these components, and my personal experience living through that, really helping to push this agenda forward, to explain the momentum where companies and leaders should start acting tomorrow. Oh, sorry, should start acting yesterday, and not only today, and can start experiencing results tomorrow, because this is not about the things I'm talking about. Practical is not something about results which are far in the future. It's about tangible results and payback period from investment into corporate innovation within within next 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And
exactly. Pavlo, thank you. Thank you for a very authentic answer to that question as well. I know that last question is very personally resonant, and there's a lot I think you can draw from that around resilience, around perspective, but also, very real disruption can come, very quickly and change everything personally and from a corporate as well, right? And there's a lot of shared learning in all of that. Genuinely, we've covered a lot today, from failure balance sheets to procurement hacks, gamified engagements with investment equity balance sheets, KPIs that actually work, etc., etc. The constant theme, though, is that failure is not the end. It's a raw material. It's an asset. And thank you for that. I hope people have enjoyed this conversation. If they have, where can they find out more about you and your work? What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn profile. This is the way you can easily find me. And yeah, I'm regularly on a regular basis publishing articles about this and many other subjects, by the way. And you can easily reach me out through LinkedIn. It's the best and easiest way.
Pavlo, thank you very much. Again, what you've shared today is not just theory, it's a roadmap for companies who are ready to build smarter, stronger, and more resilient innovation from the ground up, and to think differently in this topic about failure, but as you said, about many other things as well. And that's it for today's episode of Total Innovation. If you've enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe, share with others, and as always, leave us a review and give us your feedback. And remember, sometimes the most valuable resource in your innovation journey is the failure you've already survived. Thank you, Pavlo, and everyone. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you, Simon. Cheers.